welcome to the show.
Hello, man. It's good to see you again.
You
It's been a long
too.
time.
I know, here we are in the same town, but we're talking via video. We used to see each other quite a bit. So I was telling you before we got started, I finally woke up one day. It only took me 30 episodes to realize I should invite you on the show. But I can't wait for you to share your story for the listeners real quick, just some background. Leo and I have known each other for quite a long time. Leo was the founder of a entrepreneurship, sort of a networking group slash educational group that started years ago. And if you're a listener to other episodes of the podcast, you'll often hear me say, "How did we get to know each other?" And the interviewee and I will say, "Probably through EOK." So, Leo, you're a big reason for a lot of the people that I've met, including a former co-founder and all those things. So, thank you so much for being willing to come on here.
Oh, thank you for bringing me on. That's great. Yeah, we have run. We've known a lot of the same people through Entrepreneurs of Knoxville. You helping me run it for a long time too was very, very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, it was a pleasure to be part of it. I can remember my wife used to call them EOK days. I think it was Wednesdays at one point, right? And we would have
Yes.
multiple sessions, and she would say, "Oh, you're going to be happy tomorrow because tomorrow's EOK day." And I would
I,
spend
I
most of
heard
my
that from
time
a lot of
there.
people. There were lots of members that just kept saying, "Man, I have blocked off all of Wednesday because this
Yeah,
is phenomenal. I get so charged up for the rest of the week doing this thing every Wednesday. I learn so much with the sharing that everybody gives. Everybody's giving back to the group.
absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's done a lot of good
Yeah,
out there. It's kind of, dwindled off now. If you've been watching it, it's kind of slowed down. It's just mainly the website. You see some chatting back and forth. There's still members signing up, like once a week or something, we'll get a new member. But everything's kind of slowed down because I've been busy with, other things and I haven't been able to focus on it as much. I'm surprised how much love and attention it needs to keep moving
sure.
forward. I mean, it's got to you got to stay with it.
Yeah, well, just real quick on that. I mean, I think it may be somewhat of a testament to the group too, though. And here's what I mean: a lot of us, and I know there was an earlier group that started it.
Right.
You and some friends just decided, hey, we needed to get around each other and share best practices, and it started in a Panera coffee shop. And next thing you knew, you were having people join, and all of a sudden, there's hundreds of people in the meeting. But I think it's a testament to EOK in that. A lot of us that were in it in what we might call the early days have sort of careers and businesses have moved on up the food chain. A lot
That's
of it
true.
because the exposure to each other and the education of each other and all those different things. And so it was kind of hard to people had to kind of move their time in different directions, and so it may have been hard to sort of backfill those early people who were keeping things rolling and stuff like that. Like yourself, you've got so many different things going on now. If you
Yeah, we
don't,
talked about that when we were running it. We said that these guys and gals would come in for a season, and we shouldn't be frustrated that they go away because that means they got something out of it and they're going off and doing their thing and they don't have time to participate anymore.
I think that's a lot of what it was. I don't think it was one of the situations where people were just leaving the group because they didn't want to do anymore. It's that they needed to be able to get that time back
Right.
to move it to revenue producing business type activities, and so it did what it was supposed to do. So I think it's something that we should celebrate about the group, because even though, as you say, it is on the wane a little bit. I think also real quick before we shift gears, I think the other thing too is not that we were the early group. I interviewed Tom Ballard from
Oh, yeah.
Technovation,
Yeah.
and I told him on the podcast, I said, people tell me all the time you're one of the sort of founding fathers of the startup movement. That's not true. I'm not. There are people who've been doing this years and years ago. Tom was a founding member of Tech 2020. So there's that group, and I would call us maybe that middle group that kind of got things going in this part of Tennessee in terms of startups. And then there's now the, sort of the buzz of where it is now and all the people coming into it. And that, you know, EOK had a large part to do with that, because back then we didn't have the Knoxville Entrepreneurship Center. We didn't have, even Tech 2020 was sort of doing different things. It wasn't helping your I don't mean it in a negative way, but it wasn't helping your average entrepreneur. So
Right.
it filled that early gap. But now what I'm saying is the city has these other resources that maybe, people are going in different directions now. So I think it really did its job. So I applaud you for the idea and keeping with it as long as you have. I would love if you would take a minute, because it's one of my favorite stories, if you're willing to tell it. how you got started in entrepreneurship. You're an engineer by trade. You were working with a big company, and
Yeah.
you kind of got your start. What some might call the easy way, but I don't think any of it's been easy.
Well, yeah, I've had a lot of people talk to me, especially there's been some books out there like The Accidental Entrepreneur, and they use that reference of the accidental entrepreneur. So, I was in the corporate world, engineering degree, worked for Allen Bradley Rockwell Automation from like 91 to 2000. During that time, I had started doing some real estate investing back in 95, done some private equity investing in a few startups during that same time. But I was working for a big end user while I was at Allen Bradley, while I was at Rockwell, and had a disagreement with a couple of my managers about whether they were men or not was the main conversation because we just had a disagreement. And my wife was saying, you can't really tell your bosses that they're not men, whenever you're in a phone call with them. And I said, well, they can't get rid of me. I produce more money in the region than anybody else. I mean, like, I'm the best engineer ever. And, about 2 weeks later, I get a call that I need to come to the Nashville office to have a conversation. I get up there, they have a meeting with me, HR's there, and they said, well, we're going to let you go. And I was shocked. I was like, there's no way you can let me go. That is crazy. And then they're kind of looking at each other and saying, well, I said, well, how am I supposed to get back to Knoxville? I said, if you're firing me. And they said, well, I don't know. Here, take the company car and drive back to Knoxville and drop all the stuff off there. And the HR guy's looking at him like, that's not a good idea. I mean, you just let him go. You shouldn't let him drive a company vehicle back with all the equipment. And, I'm thinking, because I'm kind of distraught at the moment, like, well, I could let all the oil out and drive it as far as it'll go, or like see what would happen, see what colors would be produced if I set it on fire. And I calmed down and said, well, yeah, I'll drive it back. So I'm driving back to Knoxville, and the phone rings, and it's my customer that I've been working for. And they said, when are you going to be back on site? And I said, well, I'm not. I just got let go. And they started laughing. It was a little conference call, and they said, no, seriously, when are you going to be back on site? We got to get this thing done. And I said, seriously, I just got let go. I said, I don't know what's going to happen. And they were a little taken back then. They were like, well, that's not cool, and they got off the phone. So I'm driving, and I'm thinking, what am I going to tell my wife? She was right that I couldn't talk to my bosses like that, and they actually could let me go. That was the bigger concern of not having a job. It was like telling her that she was right.
Sure. Poor Debbie.
So my phone rings again in about 45 minutes, and they said, can you finish this job for us? And I said, well, I mean, I could, but, I said, I'm not really working for the company anymore. I don't have software. I don't have a laptop. I mean, I have to get all that stuff. And they said, well, we just canceled the contract with them, and we've extended a purchase order to you, and we're sending you a laptop and all the software and everything to your office. Where's your office? I'm like, I don't have an office. I said, I guess send it to my house. And that's how I started DBR Systems. They held my hand of forming the entity, what kind of insurance to get. They kept giving me projects over and over again. After I'd worked for them, though, for about, 12 months. Like, my first job with them was over in Turkey, so I went to Turkey for 6 weeks and did a startup over there of the code that I had written. And then whenever I got back, they kept giving me projects. And then they came and talked to me one day and said, you have to get some other customers. And I was like, what? Why? I love you guys. I mean, this is great. I mean, it's like warm and fuzzy, and you guys take care of me all the time. And they're like, no, we love you, but the IRS really doesn't like you just working for us if you're saying you're a contractor. I was like, oh, okay. So I went out and found some other jobs and started doing more work for other people.
So the thing I think I've never asked you about that story, and I appreciate you sharing it, because it's, there's going to be lots of people who are listening going, gosh, I wish it would start that way for me. By the way, I don't remember the last time we've talked in depth, but that's kind of one of the things that happened for me not too long ago. And so I've thought about that story many a time. But I don't think I've ever asked you is what was it about the relationship that you think that they were so willing to so quickly sort of call the other company and say, that's it, we're going to call him. I mean, that seems really quick. What was it about that? And, well, I'll let you answer, then I'll follow up with a question on that.
Well, I think it was what the end users loved about me so much was what the company that I was working for, my managers didn't love about me so much. I
Interesting.
was completely focused on the end user. I was doing whatever, whenever, however for them. I mean, it was all about delivering on those expectations that the end user had, above and beyond what the company could afford. Like what if they had quoted it that way or not, or if we were getting paid for it or not. It didn't matter. I was doing that work anyway. So, my managers didn't appreciate that because they had processes they wanted us to follow, and they had paperwork that we needed to complete. And I talked to these guys a couple of years after they let me go, and I apologized to both of them. I said, I was a horrible employee. I said, it was probably the best thing ever that you got rid of me, because I was not ever going to follow someone else's rules. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've always thought that way and always been wired that way. And I always see ways to improve and do things differently. So that's what I'm looking for. I think the end user just thought, this guy's the one that we've been working with all along. He's been with us. I'd been working with this company since '95 while I was with Rockwell. So for 5 years, I was the only one they were seeing coming in and out of their door and taking care of everything.
So,
So I think they just said, what would be different?
right,
It's
right.
just going to cost us less.
Yeah, and I suspected the answer might be what we might group together and just say really amazing customer service. Where did that come from inside you? I mean, is it something you felt like you learned, or was it just your way of dealing with people? I know you're a very kind person. I mean, what do you think was it about the way you
Well,
decided to interact with them?
I mean, for me, it was kind of growing up. Like one, not having a lot whenever I was younger, so always having to work and kind of serve. Do things that and always being pretty humble in the situations. So it's translated into everything that I've done, that I see value in everyone. Because one of the jobs I was doing whenever I was I think I was in college or high school, I was at a plant doing just like janitor type work. And the plant manager walked in with a couple of engineers, and I said good morning to them, and they didn't respond. They just like kept walking, and they're in their suits and stuff. And I was like, huh, that's kind of weird. But it struck me of how they truly thought I wasn't worthy of saying good morning to, or like, stopping to even say hi to.
Right.
I thought, well, that's not cool. So from then on, probably before that, even though I like everybody that I see, I treat them with as much respect as possible. And I think it's translated into my business with DBR systems, because whenever I was with Rockwell, I was the only engineer that would go down on the line and ask the operators what they would like to see in the system. The other engineers are just staying in the conference room, working with the other engineers at the end user and saying, how are these screens going to work? How's this going to do? Whatever. And I'm going down and asking the guys and gals that push the buttons all day long, how would you like this laid out? Is there anything weird about it now? Would you like some different colors? Would you like different screens, different information? Is there anything I can do to simplify your day? And that translated into a great deal of success for me, because if the operators are happy with the system and they feel like they've been heard, they don't, cause any problems, and they make sure that it always works. So that was always cool.
Very, very interesting. So you get into business on your own. Did you? I know you did. You go off and you get some additional customers to make them happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this entrepreneurial spirit seems to continue to actually expand as this happens to you. Since I know a little bit about your story, so what was sort of the next thing that you decided to do, that you decided to get into?
Well, so the entrepreneurial thing I think was always in me, like we've talked about before, and I told you I was praying about this for about a year with Rockwell. Like, God, I'm trying to do the best job I can. I'm out here, working hard for the customers and trying to be kind and generous and loving and everything else. And I said, and this company's just not doing things the way they need to be doing, and something needs to be changed. And I was hoping like he would, get rid of my managers and change the company so we would work differently. Instead, he gets me fired. I'm like, well, that's but it was
Careful
like
what
the
you ask
greatest
for.
it was the greatest thing ever, because I probably never would have left. It was so comfortable. I mean, such good money, such good times. I've told people over and over again, working for Rockwell was like some of the best time ever. until I got to that last year, that situation of just like bumping heads with middle management,
Right.
not management in general. Um, so I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I always kind of vicariously lived through other entrepreneurs by investing some money in their startups while I was with Rockwell. Getting kicked out of the nest like that forced me into that role of saying, well, I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to do this. And then it was successful. So Debbie was cool with, me actually being out on my own. And so we
Right.
had real estate, we had my engineering business, we had some other little things we were doing on the side of just investments. Then it just kind of kept happening. Our common friend, Brad Green with Gridwell, he said, well, and Mark McComas both, they were like, well, you're wired. All of the entrepreneurs have a certain kind of wiring. And then each individual one has different wiring. Like, are they innovators, creators? Are they adapters, adopters? Adopters, adapters. How are you wired? And they said, you're really wired to see, not to create from scratch, but to see something and understand how it could be better. So you look at existing models and go, I wonder why they don't do it this way. So that just started happening. I started building things that kind of already existed, but just modifying them so they'd make more money and be less work for me.
I think that's a great place to pause. I always like to do that when someone shares something impactful like that. I think the listeners need to take note of that. So so had some really good, what you might call peers and or mentors, really talk to you about what your style of entrepreneurship is. I think that's such a great point, that there are people who are made to go out and create something out of thin air that doesn't exist. It's sort of so innovative that if few people have thought of it. And they were telling you, I mean, you've got this ability to go into something and just improve it. Do you like that model of not necessarily trying to recreate the wheel, but just improving does that come back to you being an an engineer, or why do you think it is that way?
Well, it's strange because for the longest time I kept I love the book Atlas Shrugged.
Right.
And I talk about the innovators, creators of our time, like the ones that there's very few people that are out in the world that are actually creating jobs and creating things that people do. The majority of the world work for someone.
Right.
And I always thought, man, I'm one of those. I'm an innovator, creator. I'm like whatever. But it turns out like it was kind of a shock to me to realize that's not who I am. I haven't been innovating. I haven't been creating. I haven't been that cutting edge person of some new thing. I've just been putting parts together a little differently that already existed. And it was kind of a letdown at first, like, man, I thought I was a lot cooler than this, but I'm not.
Yeah, so if I can jump in there too, though, but it doesn't make you any less of an entrepreneur. I think part of what's happened with the whole startup scene because of reality shows and things like that is we have turned it into, you have to create this latest and greatest thing that no one's ever seen. And certainly some of that happens, but so many of those fail. Some of the best businesses are just businesses that are doing things a little bit differently than their competition. That's still entrepreneurship.
That's what. So Greg, I mean,
Brad and
Mark. Yeah,
yep.
Brad and Mark kind of sat me down and said, well, that there's not a problem. Kind of did a little shrinking on me like that. It's not a bad thing. Think about it like you're actually closer to on that curve of in creators and then early adopters and then the mass market, like the tipping point kind of thing that you see. They said it translates the same way from end users, customers, like that are on that curve to the entrepreneurs that are on that curve. Like you're wiring it the same way. So you're actually closer to success if you are an adopter adapter in that mode, because you're not having to educate someone on a brand new concept.
Exactly.
Which when you're creating something from scratch, you have to do that. You have to educate the market. This is what this is. You guys have never seen it before. Then you have to educate vendors. You have to educate. I mean, like everybody around you, you're having to educate before you can start making any money.
Yeah, well, we did it with Go Grab Lunch, of which, by the way, you were the top user we had, and that's exactly the way it was for us. I mean, you remember, you were around for all of that. We were trying to educate the market on why you needed to go have lunch with a stranger.
That's right.
And we would have people say, "Is this a dating site?" We're like, "No, go get to know somebody and figure out how you can work together." So yeah, I think it's still entrepreneurship to come in and make things better, and you're so right on, is that you avoid that the cost and time of educating someone, at which point the competition can come in and sort of grab a hold of that. Well, you've got your neighborhood nerds lanyard on, so we should talk about that a little bit too. Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't look like me anymore though. I had hair in that shot and no beard.
That's only 2 years ago, I'm sure,
I know.
right? Yeah.
I just did this a couple of months ago. We were heading to the beach, and I was like, "I'm gonna shave my head." And Debbie's like, "Oh my God, you shaved your head."
As wives will be. I keep getting told my beard's getting a little too prickly. No, I'm kidding. So why don't you tell us about Neighborhood Nerds, kind of how that came to fruition, what it is, and what's going
Well,
on with it?
I mean, yeah, like after DBR Systems, after starting that thing and being out there on my own and working at that for a while, then I kind of caught the bug, like we talked about, of building things. So I built several other businesses after that, and then in 2008 started Entrepreneurs in Knoxville, and in that environment, it's kind of contagious.
Yeah.
Like you have a bunch of people that are all entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
all excited, all pumped about this stuff, and then all of a sudden you feel invincible. Like, man, I can go start anything.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what happens, is that gets catchy and everybody starts doing it. But Neighborhood Nerds was one of the concepts that I pitched at EOK. Like, how we would use the pitch days, like we would get crowdsourcing. So I came in. And it kind of came about like by accident, like most of the things, and it came out of this, still my wiring of seeing something that wasn't exactly working and wondering why. So I'm getting calls from buddies of mine at church, in the neighborhood, saying, "Hey, can you come over and help me with my computer? Can you help me with my Wi-Fi?" And I would go over and, help them get their network working, or their computer or their printer working, or whatever. And they'd give me a bottle of wine or a gift card or something for Debbie, to get her hair done. And I was like, well, this is cool, but, this isn't really what I do. I do other things. I said, why don't you use like Geek Squad or FireDog or any of these other IT companies out here? And everybody had the same complaints. They said, well, I have to explain everything to them. And I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm trying to tell them what's wrong with my TV or my computer or my phone or whatever. And I don't even know the words to use. And I said, yeah, that's a common thing. If you don't know what you don't know, it's hard to phrase things properly or even ask for help. And they're like, yeah, that's exactly it. And then they said, well, and then they come in and they fix this one thing, but then they break three others. And I was like, yeah. I said, they're doing the best they can. So, I'm trying to, because the engineer in me and the technical side of me, I understand what's happening. This person's coming in cold. They're very good at triage, diagnostics, and fixing something. But they're coming into a cold situation. They've never seen the thing when it was working right. All they know is it's down now and I've got to get it fixed. So there's casualties. You're going to have collateral damage whenever you're doing something like that. So the end user doesn't understand that, though. And I said, well, what you really want, I said, you want somebody that's a technical person to come alongside you and be like a guide. You need somebody that knows what you want to do in your life and how technology could simplify your life or increase your enjoyment, increase your entertainment, increase your connectivity. And I said, the only way that's going to happen is you either know somebody like me that's just a buddy that you can feed beer and cigars and they'll come over and like help you do that. I said, or, you pay somebody. You just pay them a monthly fee or something. And I was just kind of throwing it out like that, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe you pay somebody and they'll just help you, And had a couple of my buddies go, dude, that's exactly what I need. I need somebody that I can pay a monthly fee and they'll come in and like, see how my network is wired and like see all this stuff and like get rid of stuff that I don't need and give me the right stuff that I do need. And I was like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. And they're like, no, you need to do that. I'm like, no, I can't do that. I said, I got other stuff I'm doing. So, just kind of got talked into it. And I was like, well, all right. I said, well, and then what happened was about a month later, and I told you, like, the whole God thing too, like whenever I see things lining up, I kind of feel like, okay, maybe he's wanting me to go down this path.
Of course.
So I had a tenant that moved out of the space that we're in, this space that we're in here. And they moved out and I was like, well, I need a new tenant here. So I pinged the neighborhood and I said, what would you like to see down here? And they said, well, nail salon, hair salon, stuff like that. And I was like, oh, those are good ideas. And then somebody said, I wish there was an Apple store down here so I didn't have to go over to the mall. And I was like, that's kind of weird. An Apple store. I said, we're not in an Apple store. And I'm also thinking, driving to the mall is not that bad, you know. I mean, where you live down here, it's not that far. But I started thinking about it like drive time is a big deal. And then diagnosing your own problems and, you know, it started like gelling for me. Like maybe there's something here that what these people are complaining about, the relationship, the knowledge of the end user, giving them advice, the locality of it, so you don't have to drive across town, especially like if you think of a concept like this in, you know, larger metropolitan areas. Like, so if it was in Atlanta, instead of driving to the one of 3 Apple stores, I don't know how many Apple stores Atlanta has, but doing that, if you had, you know, 50 neighborhood nerd stores that were like spread out all around, so they're really short distances for you to drop something off, the nerds would run over and pick up something. So I thought, all this thing's kind of like churning in my head. I build a presentation, I take it and I pitch it to EOK. But at that time, I didn't have the name. I was just calling it Sequoia Hills IT. SHIT was what I put on the.
Yeah. And just real quick for context, Sequoia is a community in Knoxville. It's about, 5-7 minutes from downtown. Yep. But it's got a nice little hub, which you're in right now. It's got a nice sort of little hub area. You own some real estate there, and there's a couple other businesses. There's been restaurants and all those different things, and so you're just in this little hub where it's just almost like a community in a town in and of itself. It's just a great little spot.
So I pitched it at EOK, got lots of feedback that was really cool, kind of shaped the idea. I still wasn't thinking about doing it myself. I was trying to get another IT provider in town to pick up the idea and just become a tenant of mine. That's what I was thinking at first.
Right.
After a while, though, of just like all the pushback and like changes in directions, the improvement of the pitch, I thought, man, this is a great idea. I just need to do it myself. So I actually started it with a couple of guys out of EOK, but that didn't run very long. And then we didn't shut it down. They just both checked out, couldn't really keep participating in it. And then Mark Armstrong came in, and he was just unbelievable. He came in and said, you know, he wanted to change the name because then we were running as Taking IT Home. Right. And he said, have you had any other names? And I was like, well, you know, I was thinking like, not Geek Squad. I said, I don't like that. I said, but something about nerds, because nerds to me translates to you're just passionate about something. Like you're a history nerd, you're a Civil War nerd, you're a science nerd, you know, whatever. I said, so I like the idea of passionate individuals that can share their passion with normal people. And he said, well, that's cool. He said, you know, we're in this neighborhood down here, and we were sitting there drinking bourbon. And I said, oh, neighborhood nerds. And he was like, neighborhood nerds.
All good stories start with, so we were having a drink.
And then we came up with Gizmo, the platypus. Gizmo, you can kind of see Gizmo there a little bit. So we, you know, because we were talking about that, and we're like, we're not really like any other animal out in the wild. We're a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We do installations of TVs, and we do audio video stuff, and we do pickup delivery and computers and cell phones and security systems and camera systems. So we were like, you know, we're kind of a little bit of everything. And then we came up with this mascot of a platypus, which was cool. But I mean, it's gone well. We've signed up about 400 members now, and about 10% are businesses. We didn't want businesses at first. I said, you know, there's plenty of people out there. There's 300 plus IT providers just in Knoxville. Right. So somebody else has got the businesses covered. But it turns out the really small businesses that are like 3 or 4 people in a shop, they can't afford $1,000 a month for like, or $2,000 or $3,000 a month for some of these bigger providers. And that's what they want as a retainer. And they're also still in that same situation. The business owner they have to know what's wrong, what they need, and then make the request of someone. What they really like about us is we come in and look at how they're doing things, and then like make suggestions of how to do it differently. And we say, you know, you don't even need that server. I mean, you paid $7,000 for that, and then it's costing, I don't know, $1,000 a year just to maintain the thing. Let's get rid of that and just move to the cloud for these 3 software packages you use. Let's get everybody on iPads instead of computers. Why in the world do you have them using laptops to do this stuff instead of just like an iPad or something? Yeah. And you do those things, and all of a sudden the technology becomes transparent, and it's just you're getting your job done, and the technology is truly working for you instead of against you then. which I've always thought that's the craziest thing. That is so frustrating that you spend good money on mobile devices and laptops and audio video equipment, and it's supposed to be making you better and making you happier and making you have fun. Instead, it's like causing you heartache, and you're like, and I'm fussing at the thing. I'm like, I paid good money for you, and I pay a monthly fee for you, and you're screwing me right now. What is wrong with you? I'm fussing at my phone like it's like alive, you know. So you need somebody in your life that can like look at what you're doing, kind of step back and say, yeah, you know, you could really just, this is what you need. This will be a lot easier for you if you just use this.
Yeah, and to stick to your model of just improving the system, not necessarily recreating it.
Right.
We were talking before we got started too. The business has been growing, so I'm going to ask you a question. I think I know the answer. What's been the hardest part of getting it up and running and going? Has it been the
Oh,
growth?
growth. And I've had a few buddies of mine tell me that too, a few mentors, that growth can kill you. You know, success can kill you if you're not careful. So, you know, we did some, you know, like entrepreneurs do. We had a spreadsheet kind of showing like kind of steady state, like what does it look like in these snapshots of so much revenue coming in, these expenses that are alongside it. Then we did some more creative stuff of like fixed costs and variable costs, and you know, looking at what is your unit that's actually making you money, what's your unit, you know, all that stuff that you do. Looked like our break even is around 412 members, something like that. At 412 members, then you start cash flowing, and that's proven about right too. So we got on this path of, I put in a lot of capital at the beginning. So, you know, 300 grand, something like that towards it, plus my time. So I'm just like pumping my time into it. Mark is contributing cash and time. So he's like, you know, we're both working for free. We're hiring staff to be in here, but we have the model that we discuss. We have some documents that we've created about what's unique and different about us. So some of the marketing salesy kind of stuff, which worked to bring people in, but then the execution required really skilled people that were like this whole package. They were very good, very empathetic, very loving, very caring. They weren't your normal IT guy, but they also had all the skill sets necessary to deliver on what we were promising. That works for a while. It's kind of like if you want to start a restaurant and you hire a really good chef, and he doesn't need recipes. You know, she comes in and wows everybody, like making something different every night, you know, like that. And you say, hey, we ought to expand. You can't expand. I mean, you got a guy.
You got to replicate that chef
that picks up this stuff, throws it in the pot, and like, we don't know why it's good. You know, he doesn't know why it's good. He can't even tell you. So I said, okay, we don't need more chefs. We need recipes that we can train someone to follow, you know, is what we need, so we can actually replicate this thing.
So creating your policies and procedures of how stuff is done has been a challenge, and then getting the people that fit those modes to be able to go out and serve the clients in the way you guys want it to be done.
Yeah, and onboarding, you know, onboarding employees is like critically important, you know, like really educating them, informing them, getting them up to speed as quickly as possible, where they feel comfortable in what their roles and responsibilities are, and they understand their job description, and you give them metrics that you can measure them by, and they can measure themselves by. You read the 4 Disciplines of Execution?
Yep.
Yeah, so doing that thing for like a team of saying, you know, don't get caught up in the whole whirlwind of things, you know, like we have some very big important goals that are focused for the company. Let's align the day-to-day activities to move us towards those big goals and objectives, and get them involved in building that scoreboard of like, what are you going to be, you know, what do you want us to measure you on that aligns with where we're trying to go as a company. And, you know, it's just a lot of work. And then onboarding members, like you got to onboard your clients so they understand what they just bought, because they buy it. It's wild to me that we get members that are signing up like every day that we haven't even talked to. They're just like, they're going to the website, clicking the sign up button, putting in their credit card and saying, cool, you know, now I've got a nerd. And it's like, do you even know what you just bought?
Yeah. Do you even know what you're
we got to educate.
Now you were talking about putting those policies and procedures in place and sort of, you know, that along with the goals driving you toward the end goal. You've alluded to this with me. So is the plan still to sort of trying to, or not try, but establish this location as sort of the beta and then hopefully roll it out into either other locations or even franchise it? What's the end goal with the company?
Yes. The goal for me from opening the door has been to franchise it because I wasn't interested in a lifestyle business where I would be down here working, owner operator kind of thing. I'm not interested in that. I thought we start this thing up, we test it, we build the model to replicate somewhere else. Maybe we do a couple more ourselves, and then we start franchising them. I hooked up with the Franchise Innovation Group, I think is what they're called. They used to be called First Choice Concept.
Right, yeah. John Batchelor in that group.
Yes. So Roger and John have separated ways, two different companies out here in the market now. Still, I'm kind of talking to both of them,
Sure.
But they're talking about, they did several concepts around town where they've taken them from 1 or 2 stores to 40, 45 stores and made them successful. So they're wanting to come alongside us because they're like, this is an incredible model. We love your brand. The logo's incredible. The gizmo's incredible. The whole thing about the retail storefront and having the members walk in and out, and you're kind of like the Apple Store, Geek Squad, coffee shop, local bar, all rolled up into one. Because we have bourbon.
I was going to say, it's not in the screen, but I know there's been pictures on Instagram and stuff.
And we've got cigars. We've got a whole, one of our members donated a humidor for us, so it's like full of cigars.
Why am I working at home?
So yeah, the goal is to franchise it. But I mean, like anything, I mean, it's a lot more work than you could think whenever you start down this pipe. I mean, I've been at this for 5 years now. It's like crazy to think that it's been that long. But, I mean, I think all the great ones actually, there is no such thing as an overnight success. They all took a lot of time before we even heard about them on Crunchbase or anywhere.
And it's so think about how we've come full circle. We start the discussion with your sort of accidental entrepreneurship, and you're awarded this nice contract that sort of gets you into entrepreneurship. And now here we are talking about a model that's taken time to build. And I'm so glad that's where we got, because a lot of people don't seem to understand that. Again, everybody sees, Ivan Meisner that founded BNI. I've talked to him on the phone years ago, and, I was asking him about his success. And I remember he said to me, I'm a 20-year overnight success.
That's right.
Because that's how it always appears to people. Suddenly the company that is big and monstrative and out being heard about everywhere, but no one sees the work it took to get to that point. And that's also, I think, one of the things that I think really defines entrepreneurship is if you're willing to ride that long wave to get, to that point.
I think people need to be educated on that on the front end. I don't think it does any good to tell them that because we're so headstrong anyway. But I think you at least try. Say, okay, I know you have the desire to do this. There's no doubt about that. But do you have the stamina?
There you go.
Does your family have the stamina?
Great point too.
To be able to do this, because it's not easy. It's a lot of work. I mean, but it's weird too, because the way we are wired, we don't feel the downs as much as normal people, I guess. Whenever it slows down or it takes a dive or even it dies and we kill it, we can move on to the next thing. For some reason, we don't see that problem, like our family may or some of our friends. Like, good Lord, you just wrote off $300,000. That's not normal. I don't know. Because you get caught up in this thing needs to exist. I've got to breathe life into this thing, and it's at whatever cost. I mean, it's like, this is something that needs to be out in the world helping people today. And you just say, I don't care what it's going to cost. I don't care what it's going to cost money-wise, time-wise, reputation, health, anything. I got to make this thing happen.
Yeah, another great point. So just this idea of failures. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we've all had them, and but I think it's all how you respond to them. If you give up versus learning from those mistakes and then taking those lessons and improving, right?
Oh my gosh, Debbie gives me a hard time about that because I said. I learned so much though from all these failures. She's like, you have the most expensive education of anyone. She said, you could have gotten like MBAs from Harvard and Stanford and wherever, like 2 or 3 times for what you spent in your education, you know.
Yeah, she's so funny. So real quickly, you talked about family. So boys are doing good. Do you think any of them will follow in your footsteps from an entrepreneurship side?
Yes, at Debbie's dismay, they
Fearful.
kind of are. So Ben just graduated from Vanderbilt and he went to work for Amazon out in Seattle. Oh, probably should. Yeah, he loves Amazon. Is going to work there forever. That's what.
Right, got it.
So
But he's
no,
going to take some entrepreneurship mentality to Amazon.
yeah. He's been talking about doing his own startup at some point, which really surprised Debbie because she's like, I thought he was like wired to be this corporate dude, you know, from day one. But he's already talking about, man, I want my own software company, my own game development company, game studio, and I was like, cool, you know, let's do it.
Let's do it.
And then Ryan, he's a sophomore at Vandy, and he's talking about the same kind of thing, like, you know, I just want to do my own thing. Like, more power to you, brother. Let's do it. I'll bet on you two over anybody else.
That's right. Poor
And
Debbie.
twins are at Bearden right now, so they're sophomores. Both of them talking about going to Vandy. So I'm like,
Oh
man,
wow.
Vanderbilt, great school.
Yeah, Vandy. Yeah, Vandy. The Knights are. You need to have your own complex over at Vandy by the time you get done. Well, poor Debbie. She's surrounded by the mentality, so I don't guess she has a choice anymore at this point.
I know. I think she's accepted it now. You know, kind of like the same thing. Like she grew up an only child, just heard her mom in the house. Getting married to me was a shock. Just living with me, you know, like a man, and then
Right.
having 4 sons. She's been surrounded by 5 guys, you know, for the last 20 years.
She's held her own, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
She's
listen.
loved.
She does. She seems to roll pretty well with the punches. So some public props to her. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. Great story. Love the tidbits for people to hear along the way. So if there's any final thoughts, sort of just to share with somebody if they're on the fence about whether to give it a shot or not.
Well, something I'd like to talk about. I'm really getting back, trying to make time to get back to Entrepreneurs in Knoxville because
Yep.
I still think there's a need for a grassroots organization in town that is just come as you are, share your experiences with other people so that they'll grow from that. Not, you know, without any kind of gatekeeper at the door saying you're not really an entrepreneur or you're
Right.
only this level of entrepreneur.
Right.
So something like that. But I want it to play better with the rest of the ecosystem here, you know, so that there is a path for everyone and we know how to connect them. The other thing is, president of Angel Capital Group here in town,
Yeah. Good point. Thank
ACG
you.
is rocking and rolling. We've got, you know, chapters all across the country. We've got funds all across the country. So you can pick, you know, how you want to play. Do you want to put some money into a fund and let somebody else kind of decide how it gets invested, sector based kind of, or do you want to kind of vote, you know, at each meeting, which is what the Knoxville chapter does. We're still a chapter model here. So you join, come to a meeting once a month, see 3 or 4 pitches and decide if you want to put some money in. So if you're out there and you're an entrepreneur and you want to get some funding, there is a local organization, Angel Capital Group, and I'll hook you up with some people that will write checks. And I also tell them how big a check that we normally write, what we're looking for, really guide them through it because I think it's wrong to assume that an entrepreneur understands how to raise money. I think it's wrong to assume that a rich guy knows how to invest in equity startups. You know, it's like they didn't make their money that way. Why do we assume they understand what a term sheet is, you know, and you know, a convertible note? It's
Liquidation preferences and all these things. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. So that's out there if you guys need help.
Yeah, well, we'll link to all of it, EOK, the website, and the Angel Capital Group website as well. So, got your hands on a lot of stuff. It's been great to reconnect with you. Thanks for sharing the stories.
Yes, sir. Good seeing you.
All right, take care.
Thanks.